That 3-week period is a foundational period. What happens in both the Jewish calendar and the Satanist Illuminatus calendar is foundational. Everything builds off of that. It's like when you build a house, you pour a foundation and then you build everything on top of it. What you're seeing happening in the Ukraine, what you're seeing happening on the border to the south, what you're seeing happening in Gaza, what you're seeing happening in North Africa, what you're seeing happening in the BRICS agreements, is the completion of the pouring of the foundation on which everything will be built for these next several years. All the events that are about to explode on us over the next several years build off of what is going to have occurred and is occurring over this 3-week period right now.
And if I can, the Bohemian Grove, where the rich and powerful of the nation and of the world come together to worship the devil, just plain and simply stated, started on July 8th and it ends on July 27th. Is there a correlation between their ritual and the explosion of things in the news that we've seen happen?
Well, certainly it's relevant. And there is a certain decisiveness to their actions that, you know, there's some commemorative things that occur that complement what they're doing in a lot of these spells with the column of events that we see. As above, so below. If you look at world events, including things in space, I'll just say it, and other places, you'll see that there's rituals or things that are done, and they're done in multiple places at the same time, quite frequently in triangular relationships or above and below relationships. And they're syncopated in such a way that they match to release powers into the world, or for release, spirit powers, demon powers, otherworldly powers into our realm. And these kinds of meetings are places where they are really, at this point, gating spiritual energy into our world. We talk as Christians about how, say, something like Whitestone happens, and the power of God is released. This dynamic, dynamo power, dynamite power is released into the world, into our world, into events around us, into people's lives around us, based on prayer, a meeting, a coming together, a joining of our wills, and releasing God's power by an act of our wills, in agreement with God. They do the same thing. That's all they're having a tent meeting, and they're releasing these occult powers, these spirit powers, these demon powers into the world at their prayer meeting. It's as simple as that. It's us against them. It's good versus evil, principalities and powers of darkness. And to not think of it in those terms is almost juvenile. You know, you have to grow up and accept, okay, yeah, we're in real battle. And this is about who inherits the planet, who controls the planet. This is about the next 1,000 years. We're at that hinge point in history where the destiny of the planet turns on a very tiny hinge. You know, one of the pastors I used to enjoy listening to talked about how big doors turn on tiny hinges. And so all of the history of mankind to this moment in time, from Adam till now, And all the history going out forward hinges on this moment in time. And just a couple of hinges on a door. We're at that turning point. And I would even speculate and state that it really comes down to that this moment is this 3-week moment. This is that hinge moment, foundational moment, the things that will have occurred in a very foundational sense that will have been completed. Some of them were started years ago. Some of them were started months ago. But they're at the final pour of this foundational moment, locking things in. That foundation will cure. It'll have a few days to set, and then we're off to the races, and they build out the rest of this building that is about to come, with this almost tribulation era coming ahead of us, if we're correct about where we're at in the history of man, as Christians, as believers, as a planet. This is that hinge moment. We're there.
Wow. So
well, I think the only way to understand where Putin, how we got here, is in the context of Syria. The Arab Spring, the efforts to create a wave or momentum that would culminate in this change of government, change of persons at the helm in these governments across North Africa, Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, and also going down into North and West Africa, and up into Syria, ultimately designed to culminate in the overthrow of Assad, which did not occur. All of that was intended. If you look at the timeline, if you could just picture on a map on the wall and a timeline, that this was like somebody drew a great big huge arrow, and all of these forces are going to culminate here in Syria, and then Assad's out, and then we have this pan-Arab state across North Africa and up into Syria, and simultaneously we're going to reorient with how the energy flows, and for the next 100 years, the next 1,000 years, everything's going to be sweet and happy because these new powers are in play, and they'll work with us, and it'll be a wonderful world. And they'll all be together, because, see, the idea was that there was going to be a certain unity amongst the players who would own those locations, a la Muslim Brotherhood, and like-minded groups. So there's this momentum that was going to build like a wave, this surge. It was going to take that whole region by storm, and then we would have peace because they would be in power in all those places, and it would all work together. And this was being pushed by, Saudis and Qatar and the Western NATO intelligence agencies, because rather than have a whole bunch of disparate groups working against each other, etc., they were all going to work together, and we were going to take out these bad guys, whether it be Morsi or Assad, either side of the spectrum. Now we'd have some commonality, and it'd all work together, and the energy would flow, and there'd be peace and flowers everywhere. Well, the reality is that was all intended to culminate, come to some form of completion prior to the Olympics. And the reason that had to happen that way is because who was also in all of these areas? The Russians. And these proxy relationships. And with the Olympics, for a decade or more, being planned and plotted and organized, with Russia going to be there, and all this stuff has to happen right, and all this money invested, and everybody, the whole world's watching and coming. And so Putin's hands are tied, because things he might have done to counter what technically is aggression to push and move and prod Russia out of these locations and these relationships, Russia was somewhat hamstrung. Because if they did anything, oh, you're a bad guy. Oh, well, the Olympics could be taken away, or the world's not going to show up, or the world's watching you. You can't do that. So he was hamstrung by design. The Olympics are given to him so that he'll be, hung up on them. And he did. He played rope-a-dope. He took all the punches, all the dragging around and elbowing and everything else. He took all the low blows, but he stayed standing, and he made it all the way to the Olympics. And all of the designs didn't happen the way that somebody intended for them to be. We didn't make it all the way. We ran short, and we didn't get in there and get Assad out in time. The false flags, the designs were poorly done, if you will. And the Western people, especially the United States, the people just didn't quite do it. And the covert actions. Putin couldn't engage us directly, overtly, but of course part of the assertion is that they had some hand through proxies, not once removed, but twice or three times removed, for the purposes of plausible denial, PD. Pay attention, certain people. Yes, PD, plausible denial. It's part of the way the game's played. Spy versus spy. Get over it. The way it's done. Okay? Plausible denial. You want all your plausible denial. Okay, you want a plausible? Okay, plausible denial. You don't want to say that's what happened? Okay, fine. You got your opinion, I got mine. I happen to have things to back up my opinion a little better than I think your facts back up your opinion. You want to argue over it? I'll have a private conversation. I'm glad to have the conversation. You want to have a conversation? Let's have a conversation. If you just want to tell me what you know happened, well, that's not a conversation, especially when we don't have facts to back it up. And I got the facts to back it up. So let's have a conversation, and we'll do it nicely, privately, and we'll have a nice drink. But in the meantime, for whatever reason, Benghazi happened. Whatever reason on the planet it happened. And because of Benghazi, and because of certain flares that went up in the air from somebody, the word went out, there's more going on here than just a little riot in the street. And you need to open your eyes up, look around the neighborhood, and realize what the franken crap was going on here. And it wasn't all unicorns and bunny rabbits. Okay? And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize that. Yes, there was a whole bunch more going on here. In fact, so much more going on here, it's unbelievable. Now, because of Benghazi, the timing got mucked up. Yep. And the people were paying a little closer attention. If you hadn't had Benghazi, we might very well have got sucked right into Syria, right on time, and Assad would be out. Why? Because we'd have U.S. troops on the ground there, all Iraq or whatever. We'd be fully engaged. We'd have engaged those people before the Russians got their SA-400 missiles in there, after the Franken little mortar thing over the border into Turkey, supposedly by Assad, which turned out to be FSA, and the gas attacks, which could have been, a different kind of gas, which, by the way, came out of North Africa. Yes, I know Gaddafi only had mustard gas. You want to have that conversation? We'll have that conversation. Give me a break. Juvenile.
Yeah, and ladies,
I don't want to go into it too much further, but the point is, guys, we would have been in Syria, but people suddenly were going, what the heck? What? What happened? And what was going on? And then some of our military people, wait a minute, whoa. I don't want to get sucked into this on a, we need to think about what's going on here. Think again. So with that in mind, Syria didn't happen on time. For whatever reason, divine intervention, alien intervention, happenstance, somebody tripped on the carpet, whatever it was, I don't care what the real reason was, we didn't end up getting into Syria on time. Putin was able, by hook and crook, happenstance, whatever reason it was, not to have to, lose Syria, lose that toehold, and he stayed up through the fight, took a couple of hard blows, stayed up through the fight, made it to the Olympics, which is, as you referenced, I said, look, he's going to play rope-a-dope right up the Olympics. You get to the Olympics,
you were right.
Long before the Olympics.
Yep.
I said, as soon as the Olympics are over, maybe even before they're over, he is going to drop the gloves, and it's going to be a bare-knuckle fight. But it's not just a bare-knuckle fight, it's a cage fight. Everything's legal. And by the way, what's the thing about a cage fight? They close the door, lock it. You're stuck in there with them till somebody's gone, out. That's a cage fight. You can't get out of the ring till somebody can't get up. What do you think we have in the whole Mideast and Ukraine? It's a cage fight. We can't extract ourselves. We can't back out. We can't back down. We're locked in. And he's dropped the gloves, and he's going to use whatever means he has to stay alive. Why? Because Putin and Russia are flat ass up against the wall. And even when you think about what Mike was talking about in the first hour. Think about what Merrill talks about and Chance over at Great American Food. When you think you're prepared, and then you go take a week or a weekend and just try it, for practice. And then you realize, oh my gosh, I didn't think of this. I don't have that. I don't have this other thing. And if I needed this, I wouldn't know how to do that. It could be as simple as the well not working.
Right.
Some little thing, and you all of a sudden find out just how unprepared you are. Okay, at a spiritual level, you're going to rely on your church. Well, what if your church, everybody in there is in the same boat you are? Or worse, you're going to rely on a building? You can't get to the building. The building's 15 miles away because that's where you go to church at. And the gas, you can't afford to get there.
Right.
Your internet's down. You can't communicate with your buddy to tell him how horrible it is and he's 10 miles away. Or get him to come over and give you a hand because he's busy dealing with his own crisis. You call 911 and you get a busy signal. You call 911 spiritually and you haven't talked to God directly because you talk to God because you hear him from the pastor. You haven't even gotten to where you deal with God directly on a daily basis. You don't even know where in his word is the scripture that applies that jars the right thought in your mind because you're not engaging God directly. You're doing it through edifices, through filters, through people. And that's what this moment is all about. We have this moment to rethink, think again about where you're at and what all of these things are actually telling us. The sky is changing color. The clouds are turning red. It tells a sailor certain things are coming based on whether it's in morning or night, what they look like. Well, you can see it. Okay, so it's time to get ready. What was the message in the Super Bowl that the Olympics were sending to us? Prepare, prepare, prepare. Even the bad guys are telling you, get ready. Okay? Even the bad guys are telling you to get ready. So you got to look at what the other side's doing and anticipate. Try to understand ahead of time and get ahead of the play. And that's all we're talking about with your audience. Look at what's going on the other side, anticipate, and try and get ahead of the play so you can make a difference, not get caught flat-footed, off balance. The play started, and you were still getting ready to, lock yourself in. Get ready for it. It's already gone past you. That's all we're doing. That's all your show's about. We're trying to give people a little bit of an edge, a little bit of a heads up to get ahead of it, to not get flat-footed like the next-door neighbor, the guy they work with, their brother-in-law, who, oh, yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah, whatever.